How's your hammer, everybody? I'm PT Devil here with another episode of Fill in the Blank with Zachary Daly, who still doesn't seem to be able to make it to work on time. I can only imagine what inane bullshit he's gotten himself into this time, so... Does the phrase viewer retention mean anything to you?
Well, it's called a running gag, or rather a flying gag. I mainly just need to shape shifting in the editing practice. Back to the episode. I am particularly excited about it for a particular warehouse full of reasons. Mainly the art, which I know that you know that I know I'll be running away into the sunset with.
Well then get on with it. We're burning daylight over here.
Burning daylight. Rather appropriate term here. Oh, before we start... If you are still here, welcome to Castlevania. Castlevania is a gorgeous 15th century dark medieval fantasy adaptation based off a video game series of the same name. The primary inspiration is Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, although there are also bits of Symphony of the Night and Curse of Darkness for certain elements of...
Thanks, dude. I was really hoping to blow out my eardrums this week.
Sorry. The chirp function is still a little out of whack since the encounter with never mind. I'll tell you later. The show takes place in the Kingdom of Wallachia, a real medieval country that is now part of modern-day Romania, and many of the cities in the anime, including Targovishta, still stand today. The anime is self-premiered July 7th, 2017, written by Warren Ellis, and produced by a lot of art houses. I'll get more to this later. Its premiere quickly brought it to number 7 in the most in-demand show on Netflix from July to October 2017. For the last time, Internet, yes, this is an anime. Mainly from the point that hundreds of anime artists were brought on board to make this show. Which probably explains my guess of at least this being a 6 or 7 digit budget, which I can't confirm because animated feature budgets are rarely publicly disclosed. But what we can confirm though, the result, the art of this. This art is leagues beyond what most anime can even dream of. The reason why I'm so excited is because it is a doubly impressive feat since the style is more or less one artist, goth vampire specialist Ayami Kojima, who's also, by the way, a huge shonen fan. By the way, her being a shonen fan probably explains why there's a couple of other little inspirations you might be able to see. Like from Berserk, Cowboy Bebop, Vampire Hunter D, Ninja Scroll, Blade of the Immortal, a handful of others. And that also, a hybrid of inspiration probably explains the very unique style that all the characters have in their designs.
There have been a lot of bad animated features in history, and for about as many reasons as we don't have time for today. But this is a series that can stand on its own along with the big boys. So, about that warning in the beginning of the episode. When it comes to the intentionally flashy horror and dismemberment that often rivals or sometimes just surpasses Tarantino and Game of Thrones combined, many might dismiss a whole series outright from pure squeamishness. While I personally don't entirely disagree, and even I had to tune out after a couple episodes back to back, let me tell you that today's word of the day is brought to you by consequences. If a sword comes to your neck, your head comes off. If you're a vampire and you get staked, you explode. World building a gritty setting like this requires consequences of actions on a make or break level in this genre and style. Needless to say, the yelling until invulnerable anime trope here, the one that we all hate, literally gets eaten alive. You live, or you don't. That's called consequences, and that's good story, especially in this type of world. That's all before we get to the dark themes of theocratic scapegoating, mob rule, oppressive persecution, the toxic couple bigotry and ignorance, and the show's core message of vengeance ultimately staking oneself in the foot. Now, in the question that I know will be brought up of who's most in the wrong, I'm not that stupid, please consider one of the finest ideological bitch slaps ever written for an anime.
Who's that? Are the speakers dead? Well, get back out there. The speakers have to die before the sun goes down.
The sun is already down.
Cannot enter the house of God.
God is not here. This is an empty box.
My life's work is in his name.
Your life's work makes him puke.
The witch!
Lies in your house of God?
Before you ask, yes, the French Revolution spin-off is happening. It was announced at Netflix's Geeked Week last June. Now, it was on hold for two rather ugly reasons, and I won't get into rabbit holes too deep on either. The first bit of it was some really messy legal dispute that apparently an exec producer was left out of the reboot. He was on the original series, but he claims that Netflix only takes on new series to get new viewers or something like that. And he claims he was left out of the reboot because Netflix wanted to cut costs or something. Anyway, it's not a legal thing I'm totally familiar with, so I will leave it out. The second thing I'm only slightly more familiar with, and it's a lot uglier. The writer, Warren Ellis, was facing 60 plus counts of severe misconduct allegations, and a lot of them turned out to be true. But, so I hear, both matters seem to be dealt with at least enough to get the spin-off series back on track, and we'll get an official release date.
I've been keeping track of your turns, and you've got about 30 more seconds before I clock you over the head.
Oh, okay, put down the hammer, put down the hammer, put down the hammer. One more thing to address, and you asked about a PT. Our normal format for this series is reviewing the first season of an anime, but Castlevania's first season is only 4 episodes. So in order to have something closer to a full season count, like typical anime we've already reviewed, we're also including season 2 of this series because season 1 and 2 are actually the first entire arc that we can review more coherently for your benefit.
Everyone has already clicked off the video because they are bored.
Hey, do not underestimate the die-hard fans of this series.
And now, our feature presentation.
Act 1. Death. Bodies are everywhere. Vacation housing? I think not. And someone's already trying to break in. Lisa, not giving much of one, is cutting down bat servants just trying to earn a living to support their kids so she can make her way into the castle, starting off by banging on the front door like she owns the place. I mean, what else do you expect of a woman? Not realizing, however, whose place this is.
Yes, it seems that this magnificent and ominous castle is home to none other than Vlad Dracula Tepes himself. What are the odds? So we're 2 minutes into episode 1 and the final boss has already made an appearance. This chick should probably be a speedrunner by now. However, rather than running for her life, Lisa chooses to stand her ground and ask Dracula to teach her science in exchange for her teaching him about humanitarianism. And despite looking and acting like someone who would sooner kill you than look at you, Dracula agrees.
You're telling me it took less than 4 sentences upon Vlad Dracula Tepes, a misanthropic vampiric overlord of death, so ruthless that hell itself filed a restraining order on his ass, and he's already totally reverse charmed by her to willingly opening only his most precious sanctuary of world wisdom? Damn, talk about the moves, woman! Art, science, literature, philosophy, medicine, engineering, astronomy, folklore. It seems there's no limits to the knowledge within. And as the bookworm is losing her ever-loving mind in this library, it's very easy to see the early ship. Which turns out to be the HMS Brexiteer. But not on fire because of any rocky relationship problems, but because of that age-old curse. Everything was fine until the church arrived. Act 2. Death. For merely uttering the word, let alone practice the heresy of science, the church follows its protocol to the letter under question 33 of Malleus Maleficarum. If you do not know what the Malleus Maleficarum is, read Malleus Maleficarum. You will come to learn that basic intimidation and oppression tactics under the name of God really have not changed much over the centuries. By the way, this is what professional idiots call the BMYEM, biggest mistake you will ever make, indicated by the hellish firestorm psychic echo of Dracula, warning humanity in his rage that they have 1 year he will give them to make their peace before he reduces their world to an ashy graveyard. For real, what is up with mass murder in the name of love, and the fandom's totally okay with it?
You know, I'm having a really hard time seeing what you like in this anime. I can't possibly fathom what could have resonated with you so
What,
well.
you mean the theocratic flame and torches mob under the influence of Pitchfork Mania? Or the massacre by absolute hell unfolding as we...
Anyway, while Dracula is losing his mind in his admittedly justified fit of rage, his now adult Dampier son Alucard tries to talk some sense into him, advising him to go after the church alone and leaving the rest of humanity out of it. Dracula then responds like any reasonable father would, by beating the living daylights out of his son and preparing for his worldwide genocide anyway. Father of the millennium over here.
Dracula knows exactly what he's doing. The thing is, he doesn't care. Because he sees his case against humanity proven by the church 1 year later, celebrating the murder of Lisa over the million times overemphasis on the G of God. To scare and control primitive people. Then, predictably, under the vengeance of a vampiric warlord you pissed off, the church's fake glory power literally comes raining down on them in an actual storm of hellfire and human blood, which is only the precursor to the main armies of Hellbeast and their atrocious attacks that we are not going to show you the whole gore reel of. Traumatizing you is the job of the show, not us. Bottom line, Dracula's now mustered army of hell is unleashed with a single order: rid the pestilence of humanity for good. Innocence does not exist as far as Dracula is concerned. It's not about going after the fascists with crosses. The method is just burn it all. Act 3, all the death.
Well, hold on to your asses, because it's about to get even more effed up, this time in the literal sense, as we then cut to a tavern in another town, where two drunken patrons proceed to have the most degenerate, country-ass, Sweet Home Alabama conversation I have ever heard. Just listen to this shit.
It's my goat, and I'd know if my goat was in love with you. I have to pay the bastard money because he went blind. So I says to him, you didn't think he was gonna go blind? A goat with mange? Find my goat laying on his side in the field, within an inch of its life, and a naked man with blood and straw all over. More ale for me and my cousin Cobb.
Brother.
Look, we might have had the same father, but you came out of my aunt.
Not gonna lie, I spent the better part of 10 minutes trying to unravel this twisted family tree before realizing I would rather shove my head in a blender than ponder it any further.
Dude, you are not getting MIT level conversation with simpletons that have been brainwashed by the church to kill every scapegoat the theocratic government finds obsolete. In this case, the backstory is the Belmonts, expert and respected monster hunters that the church blamed for unleashing Dracula's hordes, resulted in a tragic and violent wave of targeted violence that wiped out all the Belmonts. Except for the one convenient figure that the camera pans into to ID the next protagonist, Trevor, the last of the Belmonts. You might expect the tavern beatdown to follow, which, yes but no, we don't got time for that.
We now cut to the climax of the story with... no climax at all, really. We pick up after Dracula is killed, his army decimated and leaderless, and his castle is in shambles. Well, that's a ripoff! I thought Shield Hero was bad for leaving so much out of its finale, but at least it still had part of a fight scene to end off on. This is just lazy.
I'm gonna be honest, that one kind of hurt. And it kind of unraveled one of my formerly favorite shows completely. So, let's continue, I guess. With the main antagonist dead in the first season, a major plot hole opens up that the studios basically have to Emperor's New Groove negate to prevent the entire meta arc from being derailed.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
And the next 2 seasons are therefore delegated solely to headbutting the first season into submission to keep the meta arc relevant. The fact that those 2 seasons kicked ass when they did is kind of a softened blow when you consider this was only by sheer force. I mean, it's appropriate for a Tarantino rivaling Bloodfest story, but in hindsight, there are many more skillful options to use when building a multi-season storyline.
Sure, obviously there's more to come in future seasons. All the other scenes that come after this make that abundantly clear. And that's all well and good, but you know what? It doesn't make this season's ending any better! Yes, we get more than a fair amount of foreshadowing for the season to come, what with Isaac in the desert making an army of monsters, or with Camilla taking Hector to fill in the power vacuum left in Dracula's wake. But when you set up a character as a powerful, nigh unstoppable force and kill him off too early like this, it cheapens the whole point of all that setup and ruins the entire experience. I will say that the emotional weight of Alucard's arc in particular resonates the most out of all the vignettes seen in this episode. Even without dialogue, you can see the anguish and grief slowly enveloping him as his loneliness takes over. It is especially poignant in the scenes where everything goes completely silent as he wanders the ruins of his father's castle, lamenting the loss of both of his parents, and the sheer emotion in these scenes is incredibly strong. Even if they take up a significant portion of an already slow and plot-devoid episode and bring it to a grinding freaking halt, but I just have to pick my battles here.
If I'm still allowed to make any sort of guess on why the plot hole came to be, the only reason I can remotely think of is that whispered developmental hell that occurred in the production effort. Between the now obvious lack of balance between the art and writing, those legal complications that I mentioned earlier, and the near total derailment of the entire show that occurred early in the writing process, it's a half miracle the anime ever made it out the front door, I suppose. Since season 1 wasn't anywhere near long enough for the amount of story material they had, and since season 2 could not hope to wrap up all those unresolved threads at the drop of a hat without risking a bloody 15th century train wreck that would have easily killed the premise of any future episodes, I think the one card the writers had to go on for the season finale, yes, I'm only guessing in hindsight, that they just wanted a single episode without excessive gore, without showers of blood, and just let the audience have a simple breather over ice, with a chaser of season 3 and 4 shadow movements.
Sorry, I know we're supposed to synopsize this episode instead of having these deep dives into character arcs, but there really isn't anything to talk about here. It's just 20 minutes straight of post-fight cleanup, foreshadowing, and shipping bait. Nothing substantial to talk about anywhere.
Don't forget this show still requires you to make a guess, so let me hear it. Bonus points if you get any specifics.
Well, I can't make too many promises given how little I have to work with, but I should have enough to get the basics down, so here we go. Let's see if we can piece it together. Okay, cards on the table. I'm obviously not going into this completely blind, as anyone with even a tenuous grip on video game history is going to have some Castlevania knowledge. That said, having also never played any of the games myself, my knowledge is basically limited to a few core concepts and a few characters that were added to Smash. So, no time to waste. One of the biggest hints to what happened in the middle comes during one of the shipping bait scenes between Trevor and Sypha, where the latter basically synopsizes the adventure they just had. Therefore, we can reverse engineer these tidbits to recreate the story from there. After getting evicted from the Frick Chamber Tavern, Trevor comes into contact with Dracula's forces, including Sypha being in the process of being turned into a creature of the night herself. Fortunately, presumably through the assistance of a group of people he met earlier, a nomadic faction of whatever country Sypha is from most likely, Trevor is able to rescue and revive her from her state of living death. From there, Sypha is able to join Trevor in his quest in fighting off the demons, using her magic to fend them off and protect the cities of Gresht and Argus. From there, they travel to the Belmont's estate, where they retrieve some holy weapons they can use, including the Vampire Killer Whip, and Sypha is able to use the forgotten spells stored in the library to blow up the engines in Dracula's castle to keep it from moving after luring it into a trap right above the Belmont's home. Afterwards, they are able to fight and ultimately defeat Dracula. However, that's only half of the story. There are more than enough villains in the epilogue to suggest that there was some development on Dracula's end of the story, as evidenced by the existence of overzealous barber Isaac, Confederate Hector, and femme fatale Camilla. These are far too well-established characters to have been just created haphazardly using his hell mirror, so the only logical explanation is that Dracula was able to recruit them for his cause. The thing is, he wasn't that great at controlling them, as Camilla was secretly working against him the whole time, intending to betray him and take over his kingdom of monsters for her own goals. She was able to convince Hector to join her side, but Isaac was too wise to her betrayal and was cast aside and banished to the desert for trying to fight back against her. All this was done without Dracula's knowledge, however, so his death was at least partially caused by a rebellion within his own ranks, providing an opening for the heroes to reach him. Beyond that, the details get a bit too fine to be able to pin down any of them accurately. You can assume that there was some flirt fighting between Trevor and Sypha, as well as Alucard being a low-key sass queen, but aside from that, all I can get is the broad strokes.
Don't worry, 3.5 out of 5 stars overall. Solid on most, including the inevitable defeat, but deductions on Isaac's storyline. Only reason for the latter is that his storyline is one of the most unique and powerful developments in this series, and that's quite difficult to predict given it's so good. And yeah, you pretty much nailed the play fighting and Alucard's teenage emo Queen of Sass vibes. Well, that was quick, so does this series fill in the blank? Well, yes, but no, and it's not a total win. It only fills in the blank because the preceding episode was more or less explicitly narrated in the season 1 finale. I'm not gonna lie that I'm now disappointed that the season 1 finale was a cheap mix of filler, what's next foreshadowing, and unresolved story threads of literally everyone else. The welcome breath of fresh air, not saturated with blood and guts, is certainly appreciated, but it does not change the fact that what actually filled in the blank was the final battle in the preceding episode. Season 2, Episode 7. Dracula's army is already shattered by and the very second that the 3 protagonists start in, even a baby would know that if the trio has not been sought by all the hordes of hell yet, Dracula's fate is already signed, sealed, and delivered. The actual finale itself is only hollow filler of a generic hero's journey that we've already seen a million times. That and Alucard getting emotionally train wrecked. But in any animated medium, art and writing have to be balanced as one. Enough with the Rebus jokes, people. And now I'm more obligated to point out that the meta writing missed a lot of opportunity to make the writing as inventive and as memorable as the art. I mean, sure, season 3 and 4 kicked the ass when they arrived and actually produced some of the best art and writing of the entire series. But that was a lot of effort in digging themselves out of a mile-wide plot hole that could have and should have been avoided in the first place. All that being said, I still want to give props to the best lesson of the show. One I really, truly wish that more people would learn. Evil bastards are always going to try to screw everything up, mostly just because they can. However, I want you to remember this parallel to the first law of thermodynamics. Vengeance as hot as the sun always ends up and makes you as cold and as distant as Pluto. I do give special props to the writers for allowing certain characters to not only get that message, but also do something I also really wish people would do more. They grow up. Some of the characters get a +5 to maturity checks from a military perspective from finding the futility of fighting an unending war of attrition, second definition of insanity, but others learn it from very calm and unexpected moments, such as when Isaac is first exposed to that reality by a very wise teacher. A teacher who's already been awarded by the YouTube comment section the informal, unanimous badge of doing a solid for humanity, which the Idiot and Puppet Crew fully support under Section 10 of the Informal Heroes Act, Idiot Collective Pack 7. Back to the tally room for our final score. Yes, the series did fill in the blank. Still, the main sin is that one bookend was a full episode before the finale, leaving the actual finale to be only recap and viewer hooking without really building upon anything that the first episode gave. Given that and a missed opportunity to be clever with the writing and to be inventive with the much larger vampiric classic, we're going to go ahead and give this a D.
Look, I'm no expert in video game adaptations to any film-based media, and that's a whole different section of YouTube. That's not ours. And I'm going to admit, yes, my bias they are probably maybe completely overlooked that flaw. But I can't confirm this since neither one of us has actually played the games, but I'm wondering if that Season 2 plot hole, maybe that's just part of the curse of adapting video games to film, which has a long, kind of ugly history. We're not going to mention Silent Hill.
Video game adaptations are a notoriously thing hard to pull off already, since they already have an established lore, plotline, and character arc. Mess with them too much and you risk alienating the fan base you're trying to market to. Keep it too similar and the whole project becomes redundant, since video games are already a visual medium.
One major adaptation that I know they made from the game to the series was they made Dracula less of a flat, cliche, total tyrant archetype and moves into a more tragic figure zone for character development, which pretty much works since one character calls him out for his whole misanthropic war being just one long suicide note, which is critical to ensure that he doesn't know what he's doing or just doesn't care, so we can have the conflict, so we can have a story. Now, that adaptation for Dracula, in spite of the other pitfalls, works.
They certainly did the best with what little they had to work with, and the characterization and art style is still more than enough to warrant giving it a shot entirely on its own. That is, if you can get past the Goblin Slayer-esque torture porn found in the gratuitous amounts of blood and gore plastered over absolutely everything in sight. Still, though, it is a compelling story, and maybe we might come back to the series later down the line if you happen to like this episode.
Yeah, this is a show that you and I can only watch a couple episodes at a time because you can only take so much gratuity before it just gets insane. So, thank you for watching. Watch the blood out of your eyes, please mind the puddles, and stay tuned for episode number 5, which is... What are we doing for number 5, VT?
Well, let's just say that we all know what they say about what misery likes.
I do not like that look in his eye. Thanks for watching. Go get vaccinated, participate in elections, and don't stay quiet when the fascists come marching in. Okay, time to go!